Hey, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into something that, well, it affects so many of us, and it's been on a really concerning rise.
Yeah, you mean the prevalence of serious diseases.
Exactly. Just look at the figures between 1980 and, say, 2021. Heart disease. It went from about 11 million to a massive 19.4 million cases.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It is, and cancer more than doubled. We're talking 4.8 million up to nearly 9.9 million.
Incredible numbers.
And then there's diabetes. That shot up from roughly 516,000 to 1.66 million.
So these aren't just slight increases, they're significant trends.
They really are. And these trends, they're not just numbers, are they?
Yeah.
They signal a real need for, well, fresh perspectives on how we tackle these things. Treatment, yes, but maybe even more importantly, prevention.
You're absolutely right. It underscores a critical point. We need to dig deeper. We need to understand what's really driving these diseases and explore strategies that hit the fundamental issues, not just managing symptoms.
And that's exactly what we're setting out to do today. We're diving deep into the ideas presented in a book called Terminating Diseases by Targeting Root Causes. It's by Gabriel Iqbal.
Ah, yes, Gabriel Iqbal, Canadian health scientist.
That's him, award-winning scientist, author, founder of Eureka Academy. He's got a really interesting background. Some folks might know his other work, like Heart Intelligence.
Right. He takes a, shall we say, holistic but science-grounded approach.
Precisely. So our mission, really, for this deep dive is to pull out the core insights from Iqbal's book. His proposals for tackling these huge health challenges by getting right down to the root causes. What starts them?
What's really compelling about Iqbal's work, I think, is how he weaves together existing scientific knowledge with some, well, pretty forward-thinking concepts.
Yeah.
He's really pushing us to look beyond just the surface symptoms and identify the foundational disruptions, the things that actually lead to disease in the first place.
Okay, so let's unpack one of the central pillars of his argument then. He talks about the absolutely critical role of mitochondria.
Ah, the powerhouses.
The powerhouses of the cell, exactly. Just a quick reminder for everyone listening, think of mitochondria as these tiny, tiny power plants inside almost every cell in your body.
They're essential. They produce the energy that basically keeps everything running, like little engines converting food into usable power, ATP.
Right, and what Iqbal really emphasizes, and this is key, is that when these mitochondria aren't working correctly, he calls it mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yes, dysfunction.
The impact goes way beyond just feeling a bit tired. He makes a pretty strong case that this dysfunction is a core underlying factor in a whole range of diseases.
A really wide range. Things like metabolic disorders, cancer, diabetes, even neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
So his point is, if we can address the health of these tiny power plants, our mitochondria,
we might be able to impact a lot more than just our energy levels. We might be hitting something fundamental to many chronic diseases.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because the book doesn't just say, hey, mitochondria are important. It actually zeroes in on therapeutic strategies, ways to specifically target and hopefully improve mitochondrial health.
Exactly. So we're moving beyond just symptom management. The idea is potentially restoring proper function at a very, very basic cellular level.
It's like getting to the root of the power outage in the house, not just fiddling with the light switch.
That's a good analogy, yeah. The perspective shifts. Instead of just dealing with the consequences of the breakdown, you're trying to fortify the cell's fundamental ability to work correctly.
Which opens up some really innovative possibilities for treatment, doesn't it?
It certainly does. New avenues to explore. We're tackling something pretty interesting. It's this idea about what might really be underlying a lot of diseases.
Yeah, based on some excerpts from Gabriel's book, Terminating Diseases by Targeting Root Causes.
Right. The idea, which seems to be gaining some traction, is that maybe chronic parasitic infections are playing a much bigger role than we usually think, affecting immunity, gut health,
Inflammation. All the big players in chronic illness.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack that based on these source materials, dig into the main arguments.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Gabriel's book, it puts forward this pretty striking thesis, doesn't it? That diseases are increasing, maybe exponentially, and parasites are the root cause.
That's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The argument presented is that these persistent infections, they can set off a whole chain reaction in the body.
A chain reaction. How? What are the mechanisms they talk about?
Well, the excerpts really focus on a few key things. First, how parasites can kind of interfere with our immune system, maybe suppress it or misdirect it.
Right.
Then there's the gut health aspect that can seriously disrupt the microbiome, damage the gut lining. All things we now know are, super important for overall health.
Right. The gut connection is huge these days.
Exactly. And all this disruption, this immune interference, it often leads to chronic inflammation. And we know inflammation is a fundamental driver behind so many diseases.
Makes sense. It's like a cascade. And the source material actually names names, right? Specific parasites.
It does. Toxoplasma gondii gets a mention.
Yeah.
And also various types of helminths, worms.
Worms, okay. And what sort of conditions are being linked even tentatively to these parasites in the book?
It's quite a range, actually. The excerpts touch on connections to neuropsychiatric disorders.
Really? Like mood or cognitive issues?
The suggestion seems to be there.
Yeah.
Also malnutrition, which makes sense if parasites are stealing nutrients and even potentially cancer. There's a reference to research by Hotez and others in that context.
Wow. Neuropsychiatric stuff and cancer? Those are heavy hitters.
They are. Okay, so the book talks about some specific substances that might be key players here. And two that come up quite prominently are Ivermectin and Fenbendazole.
Right. Now, most people, if they've heard of these, know them as anti-parasitic drugs.
Yeah, for treating worms and things like that in animals and sometimes humans.
That's their established role, definitely. But what Iqbal brings to the forefront is this emerging body of research suggesting they might have significant effects elsewhere.
Like where?
Particularly in the context of cancer, potentially, and also other diseases linked to metabolic issues. The book delves into the mechanisms, how they might interfere with cancer cell growth, maybe modulate our immune responses, or even help address metabolic imbalances seen in diabetes, or issues in neurons or heart tissue.
So while we know them for parasites, Iqbal is highlighting this potential for a much broader impact based on how they interact with our cells.
Precisely, looking beyond the primary function.
Now, with ivermectin specifically, it's worth just pausing for a second. I mean, the discovery of this drug was huge. It actually won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine back in 2015.
That's right, awarded to Dr. Satoshi Mura and Dr. William Campbell. That's a massive validation of its importance, at least for its original uses.
Absolutely. A Nobel Prize isn't handed out lightly.
And that recognition extends further. The World Health Organization, the WHO, includes ivermectin on its list of essential medicines.
Essential medicines, okay.
Which really underscores its fundamental role in treating certain widespread parasitic diseases globally. It does make you think, though, about the potential of well-established drugs. Could there be more to them?
And just to give a sense of its use, I mean, even here in the US, back in 2022, ivermectin was the 314th most commonly prescribed medication, something like that, over 200,000 prescriptions.
So it's definitely in circulation.
It is, and it's available on its own or sometimes combined with other drugs like albendazole or, interestingly, fenbendazole, which, as you said, Iqbal also discusses.
Right, so we're talking about substances that are already out there, already in use, potentially having these broader applications that maybe we haven't fully explored or appreciated.
It's fascinating, this idea that a molecule designed for one thing might interact with our cells in multiple ways, leading to unexpected, maybe beneficial effects.
It really is, and Iqbal's work encourages that kind of exploration, looking at these alternative pathways, the broader cellular impact.
Okay, so moving on from those two. Another compound that Iqbal discusses, specifically in relation to boosting mitochondrial health, is methylene blue, often just called MB.
Methylene blue, yes.
Now, this is something people might vaguely remember from, high school chemistry as a blue dye, or maybe as an antiseptic.
That's its history, absolutely. Used as a stain in labs, and it has antimicrobial properties. But what's gaining traction now, and what Iqbal highlights, is its potential to actually improve how our mitochondria function.
How does it do that?
Well, the book explains that methylene blue can act as an electron donor within the mitochondria.
Okay, let's break that down a bit for everyone. What does being an electron donor mean there? And why does it matter for the mitochondria?
Good question. So essentially, it helps the electron transport chain work better. This is that crucial series of steps inside the mitochondria where electrons get passed along like a tiny bucket brigade. And this process ultimately drives the production of ATP. That's the main energy molecule our cells use for, almost everything.
The energy currency.
Exactly.
Our body is made up of trillions of cells. They all require energy to function. This energy is created within our cells, in the mitochondria. Here, food is converted into chemical energy called ATP. ATP is released by the mitochondria so cells can use it. Mitochondria consist of two membranes, an outer membrane, separating it from the cytosol, and an inner membrane, surrounding the so-called matrix. The area between these membranes is called the intermembrane space. ATP is generated at the inner membrane of mitochondria by an efficient mechanism called oxidative phosphorylation, involving several membrane protein complexes. Nutrients provide high-energy electrons in the form of NADH, which are used by the protein complexes to pump protons from the matrix to the intermembrane space. This continuous pumping creates a proton gradient, where the positively charged protons are attracted to the more negative matrix. When the protons re-enter the matrix through the ATP synthase protein complex, they catalyze the production of ATP.
So, by donating electrons at the right place, Methylene Blue can help this whole chain run more smoothly, more efficiently, potentially boosting ATP production, improving cellular energy, supporting metabolic function.
So it's like giving the cell's energy production line a bit of a jump start, maybe, if it's struggling.
That's a really good way to put it. A jump start, or maybe making it run more efficiently. And the potential benefits might not stop there.
Oh.
Iqbal also notes how MB might enhance glycolysis. That's another way cells make energy from glucose, especially when oxygen is maybe a bit low.
Right.
And Methylene Blue seems to improve oxygen availability within the cell, which helps with that too. Plus, it acts as an antioxidant.
Ah, so it protects the cell too.
Yes, it can help neutralize those damaging free radicals, those unstable molecules that can harm cell structures, including the mitochondria themselves, which are quite sensitive.
So it sounds like it's doing a few different things then. Boosting energy production, helping with glucose use, and protecting against damage.
It seems to have this sort of multi-pronged effect at the cellular level, which is why the book presents it as this really versatile potential therapeutic agent.
With applications where?
Well, the book suggests possibilities across a spectrum, from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, maybe heart problems, metabolic disorders like diabetes, and even potentially in supporting cancer therapies.
Wow, so it's about harnessing these fundamental biochemical actions to support cell health across different body systems.
That's the core idea, leveraging its properties to bolster the resilience and function of our cells at that very basic level. And that could have really far-reaching implications for health.
Okay. Now, shifting gears slightly, but still related to cellular health. Another big concept in Iqbal's book is this idea of alkalization, maintaining an alkaline environment.
Yes, pH balance.
This topic comes up a fair bit in general health discussions, doesn't it? How does the book frame it?
Iqbal discusses the importance of keeping a slightly alkaline environment within the body for cells to function optimally. The book lays out the reasoning, suggesting that if the internal environment becomes too acidic, it can actually hinder cellular processes. It might even contribute to the development or progression of disease. It's a bit like how plants need the right soil pH to thrive. Our cells also have their preferred environment.
And this idea, it connects directly to the work of Dr. Otto Warburg, doesn't it? The Nobel Prize winner.
Absolutely. Iqbal draws that line very clearly. Warburg, who won his Nobel back in 1931 for work on respiratory enzymes.
Often called the father of oncology.
Right. He's famous for identifying the Warburg effect. That's the observation that cancer cells seem to prefer generating energy through glycolysis, that less efficient sugar-burning pathway, even when there's plenty of oxygen around, which is weird.
Yeah, normal cells usually switch to the much more efficient mitochondrial respiration when oxygen is available. So that discovery was pretty paradigm shifting at the time, right?
Yeah.
Challenged the norms.
It really did. Made scientists rethink cancer metabolism entirely. And Warburg took it a step further. He hypothesized that the root cause of cancer might actually be damage or dysfunction in mitochondrial respiration itself.
Back to the mitochondria again.
Exactly, that the damage to the main power plant forces the cell to rely on this less efficient backup generator. And this metabolic shift, he thought, was fundamental to cancer development.
And as Iqbal presents it in the book, One of Warburg's really striking findings or claims was that cancer cells cannot survive in an alkaline environment.
It's a very bold statement, and it highlights the potential significance of pH at the cellular level, according to Warburg's research interpreted by Iqbal.
But there's a crucial caveat here, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely critical. And the book emphasizes this too. Our body tightly regulates its overall pH within a very narrow, slightly alkaline range, usually between 7.35 and 7.45.
That range is vital for survival, basically.
Yeah, totally. Significant shifts either way, too acidic or too alkaline, are dangerous. So any strategies aiming to influence body pH, whether it's diet or supplements, they need to be approached really cautiously, ideally under medical guidance. It's definitely not about trying to make drastic changes to your overall body pH. It's likely more about the microenvironment around cells. It's complex.
Right. It's about balance and caution. Very important point. So, okay, the book brings together these different elements: mitochondrial health, repurposed drugs like Ivermectin and Fenbendazole, Methylene Blue, the concept of alkalization.
Yeah.
How does Iqbal suggest putting these pieces together, practically speaking?
That's where he talks about integrated treatment protocols. The idea isn't to use these things in isolation necessarily, but rather to see them as potentially interconnected parts of a more comprehensive, a more holistic approach, both for prevention and treatment.
So combining strategies.
Yes. The book offers some practical frameworks for how these might be integrated, but always stressing the need for a personalized, patient-centered approach. Meaning you have to consider the individual, their specific genetics, their environmental exposures, their lifestyle. All of that matters when tailoring any kind of health plan. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all prescription.
Moving away from that standardized model.
Exactly. And the book also touches on other interesting areas too, like the potential role of some of these therapies in addressing STDs, sexually transmitted diseases.
Really?
Yeah, and also the crucial importance of supporting the immune system. Immunotherapy, immune-enhancing agents, how they fit into maintaining health and fighting disease.
Right, the immune system is key.
And there's even discussion of natural detoxification protocols, helping the body clear out unwanted substances and restore its natural balance. It really paints a picture of a multifaceted strategy for well-being.
It sounds quite comprehensive. So, who is this book really aimed at? Who would get the most out of it?
Well, I think Iqbal has aimed it pretty broadly, actually. It would definitely be valuable for health professionals, doctors, researchers looking for new perspectives or directions in disease treatment, but also for individuals who are just really interested in the science behind health. People focused on metabolic diseases, cancer, neurodegenerative conditions, or anyone exploring, science-backed alternative or complementary therapies.
So anyone who wants to understand the deeper mechanisms.
Pretty much. Anyone wanting to get beyond the surface level and understand potential new avenues for intervention.
And to help make these, let's face it, sometimes complex scientific ideas a bit easier to grasp, the book uses things like infographics, tables, graphs.
Yes, that's a really helpful feature. It helps break down the intricate data and concepts, making them more accessible. Whether you're an expert in the field or just a scientifically curious reader, those visuals definitely help.
Good. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into Gabriel Iqbal's Terminating Diseases by Targeting Root Causes, we've covered some really fascinating ground, these interconnected themes.
Yeah, it all seems to loop back.
It does. The absolute significance of mitochondrial health.
The cell's engine.
The intriguing potential of repurposing known drugs like Ivermectin and Fenbendazole.
Looking beyond their initial use.
The energy-boosting and protective qualities of Methylene Blue.
That multitasker.
And this concept of fostering a healthy, slightly alkaline cellular environment may be linked back to Warburg, all presented as key strategies.
And the common thread is tackling prevalent diseases by addressing what Iqbal sees as their root causes.
Yeah. It's a perspective that really encourages us to look beyond just managing symptoms, doesn't it?
It really does. It prompts consideration of these fundamental biological processes that, when they get disrupted, might contribute to so many different conditions. It's about focusing on the underlying imbalances and how we might potentially restore them.
It certainly gives you a lot to think about. Makes you wonder, how much could our whole approach to health, to prevention and treatment evolve if we really put the focus on optimizing cellular health at this fundamental level.
It's a paradigm shift perspective, for sure.
Definitely encourages you to dig deeper into these ideas. If you are interested in learning more about Gabriel Iqbal's work, Gabriel Iqbal's books, The Book of Wellbeing and Heart Intelligence, for, related insights. You can check out his website at www.gabrieliqbal.com. Good resource. So thanks for joining us for this definitely thought-provoking deep dive. Here's something to mull over. Consider how focusing on the very building blocks of your health, your cells, could represent a whole new way of thinking about staying well. It's definitely food for thought.
Borrowed knowledge from institutionalized dogma is no knowledge at all. Get down to it and create knowledge experientially. Gabriel Iqbal.